For my presentation, I decided to do mine on the economics of Bitcoin. And I chose this because my field of study is business law, which a business lawyer helps individuals resolve legal disputes. So they're an attorney who focuses their practice on issues that affect any type of business. So taxation, business transactions, your property, anything that you need help with, your business lawyer can help you. So the features of a business law degree are, just as I stated, you can have your property business lawyer, your tax business lawyer, anything of that sort. So the journal I targeted for publication is the Economics of Bitcoin, which the purpose of, the academic purpose of mine was to inform readers of what Bitcoin is and the positive and negatives of it. So Bitcoin is quite a difficult concept to understand, and even learning about it can be quite difficult. So I wanted to basically break down what it was and why people buy it and invest in it, and the positives and negatives of buying into it. So for my writing conventions, for my specific journal publication that I did, they had very many different conventions and functions. So the ones that I chose to follow were to inform readers, to persuade readers, to establish goodwill in readers, and to save readers time. So by doing these, I feel like I accomplished what I wanted to do. So I informed them. I didn't so much persuade them because it is just an open opinion on whether or not you believe Bitcoin is positive or negative. And I used many different sources to establish goodwill in readers, positive sources that are scholarly, and to save readers time. So I wanted to basically write a short journal about what Bitcoin was in the simplest way. For my discourse community, it's basically anyone who wants to learn about business, whether you're in marketing, accounting, finance, entrepreneurship, management, because business is such a large thing and so many people look at different things in a business major. It's basically to anyone who wants to learn about business, who's interested in Bitcoin, cryptocurrency. The discourse community for business is very, very large. So for my journal analysis, for the conventions I chose to follow for the specific publications, the style and tone is quite formal in my paper. There's no slang terms used. I tried to keep it very informational while still being formal. And also, when you're doing that, you also want to write in third person. You don't want to include I, me, you, anything like that. You want to keep it very third person. And also for the publication, they always require a works cited, which I did too, and an abstract, which is just an overview of what you're going to be writing about. So for the conventions I chose not to follow is the journal includes visual representations. I didn't include any in mine. Bitcoin isn't much of a visual thing to understand, so I get more of mine just reading it and comprehending that. I also didn't include an outline because my journal was only 6 pages long, whereas they are usually between 20 and 25 pages long, so it wasn't necessary. Also, same thing with sample chapters. It's not necessary because of how short it is, and I'm not a publicator, so I don't have an author resume. It's just, I don't have that. So for my initial plan, I actually intended to do a positive and negative Bitcoin, where I just talked about whether it was good or bad and what the majority of people did, but instead I made it an informative analysis of what it was, because it is such a difficult thing to explain. I felt like it would take too many pages to require what the positive and negatives were. So instead I just talked about it and what it was, because it is such a difficult concept to understand. So my topic proposal, I just wanted to give a brief overview of what I would be discussing. So, of course, in the beginning, I was planning on writing an argument paper of the positive and negatives, and instead I didn't do that, and I did the analysis. So, I wanted to discuss of why we should go to cryptocurrency rather than paper money, and if it was like a good thing, if it wasn't a bad thing, which I did discuss in my paper, the negatives of cryptocurrency with the black market and all of that. And I also talked about the positives about how economical they are for the entire world to just transfer to a cryptocurrency rather than having fiat money. So for the sources I used in my paper, I wanted to pick everything that was very related to what I wanted to talk about so that it would give me good points and ideas to mention in my paper. So the 5 sources I used, the first one I used in my paper was the blockchain security, and that talks about how Bitcoin makes sure everything is secure and anonymous. So for that, I used someone by the last name of Park, and he works in the Department of Computer Science at a university in Korea, and his coworker is also by the last name Park, and he works in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at the same university in Korea. This shows that the credentials of the 2 authors proves that they have knowledge in this field, and they are very understanding. They understand how blockchain and Bitcoin, how they work, and just overall how the challenges are and how they can be fixed, and they just provided a very good idea of what those 2 were. For the next source I used was by someone of the last name Harrison, and he discussed the more political and economist side of Bitcoin and why countries have banned the new developing countries, and especially in China. He talked a lot about China in there because they are very open to Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. He is an associate professor of economics at the University of Mississippi and has a PhD in economics from a Wayne State University and a master's degree in economics from the University of Toledo. Not only has he written just one journal, he's written several journals in this field of study, which gives him an immense amount of credibility. Okay, so the next one is by the last name Kvyat, and he attended Duke University. He discusses the positive and negatives of blockchain, and he discusses why people believe that it isn't ever going to work for the world currency, and he also talks about why it should and why it can work. He attended, once again, Duke University, and he graduated from law school there. He is currently a lawyer in New York, and he's published several journals. This gives him credibility because he just knows what he's talking about. He has an idea, and he's not biased. He only speaks on facts, so he's very well educated in this area. The next one is Misha, and she talks about just basically an overall of what Bitcoin is. It's very simple to understand and to read this. So they just talk about why it's not trusted, all the negatives, and why it is viewed so negatively in very many parts of the world. And they went to University of California, Berkeley, the School of Law. They have an undergraduate major in history, and his minor is in American Asian Studies. So he's internship for very many different companies. He's been in quite a few magazines and website interviews. So he does know what he's talking about. He researches very well, and he just gave a very simple and easy way to understand what Bitcoin is. So for my journal that I wrote was on cryptocurrency such as Bitcoin and why it's become so big. One of the main reasons why it's become so big was it was created in 2007 by someone who is still unknown. They have no idea who created this. He just goes by a unknown name. And when it became very popular, people started investing in it in 2009. And Bitcoins were only going for like $5 per Bitcoin. So looking at it now, Bitcoins are worth almost $10,000 per Bitcoin. So if you would have invested your $5 in one Bitcoin in 2009, you'd have over $4.4 million if you would have saved it till now. And that is an insane profit, and that's why it is such a thing to talk about and why it's so popular. But there's so much skepticism to it because it is an anonymous thing. When you use it, you do not know who bought it, since people, you have it like blockchain, so that makes it anonymity. So Bitcoin has a very well played role in the black market, and that's why it is so unethical to so many and why it should be banned. Because of its role in the black market, people think that it shouldn't be used because of its escape to buying illegal things, and it's just never a good thing. Also with Bitcoin, when you mine Bitcoin, you're basically using so much energy, and it's the same amount of energy in one mining that you would use in an entire week for your whole household. So it's very non-economical, you're not getting your money's worth out of it, and you only make, I think it's a 12th, you do make money from mining it, but you only make a 12th of what it's actually worth. So it's really honestly not worth it in the end. Basically, what I wanted to do was I just wanted to give a main overview of what Bitcoin was, its negatives, and why people don't want it. And I wanted to give a very positive view too, because I didn't want to be biased in my review of it. I just wanted to summarize of what Bitcoin was in the most simplest terms so that everyone can understand what it is. And for my call for action, I think that learning more about the stock market and investing your money wisely can just do so much good for you, and especially if you invest it wisely. Like I said, people who invested in Bitcoin in 2009, just a $5 share of it, would have over $4.4 million if they would have saved it and not cashed it out. So just learning about the stock market and investing your money wisely, you can just make so much money from that, and it can just do you a great deal later in life.